The Venus heavy week. Between Venus making so many connections and a full moon in the sign of Taurus, there's a Venus theme happening. So let's talk a little bit about Venus themes. And I've covered quite a bit about Venus through all of my Libra episodes and all of my Taurus episodes earlier in the year on Astrology for Awakening, which is my astrology school. By the way, this week marks the very last of the Astrology for Awakening classes. That means that I have gone all the way through the zodiac, 4 or 5 episodes per zodiac sign, and the asteroids. I've covered Vesta, Ceres, Juno, Pallas Athena, and Chiron. So there's so much content. If you are bored, you want to dive in, every single episode has something that is specifically for you. You'll know what it is as you're listening because we each have all of these archetypes in our consciousness. We're all acting them out all the time. And I like using astrology as just the organizing tool. It's the map of your own psyche, your own consciousness. And the way that I go through and break them all down, it helps you to see, oh, yeah, I have a shadow that acts itself out over here, and I have so many gifts that are trying to break through over here. Make sure that you give them a listen. And the very last episode that I release on YouTube under the playlist Astrology for Awakening is going to be on that Scorpio Taurus axis. So we also have a full moon in that axis, so we're feeling it. It's all really good. And Venus. Oh my God. Okay, so before we get into Venus, I'm Naka Perkins of Electra Astrology. This is the path ahead. This is my astrology forecast. I release these every Monday. So I'm going to be talking about the week of November 2nd through the 9th. Like I said, we have a Venus heavy week. So here's the thing with Venus. You have heard me say we all want Venus things. We all feel on some level like we don't have enough Venus things. Money, love, self-worth, confidence, popularity, romance, flirtation, abundance, right? Venus brings us the goodies. But one of the big Venus questions that we always have to look at is around our values. And we have to go a little bit deeper under the surface of all of those Venus things, which we say we want, we want. But once we get under the surface, we start to see it's not quite as clear cut as, oh, I want that. So I was thinking of examples of this. So think of celebrities that you have admired for the course of your life. And we'll just use Princess Diana because she's a pretty neutral celebrity. Most people tended to really love her. She didn't live long enough to fall from grace, or she's just genuinely a good person and a good celebrity. Think of her popularity and how much of a burden it was for her. Any place you go, people are adoring you. They're wanting a piece of you. They're not allowing you to just live your life. So, on one hand, we may say, well, I would love to be famous and I would love to have popularity. And on a base level, I would love to be validated all the time with people admiring me and telling me how amazing I am. That would feel really good. But the other side of that is that would be really overwhelming. And I want my privacy, and people are not really seeing who I really am. They're just seeing this glossed version of who I am. They're projecting onto me. So we know that there are a bunch of celebrities right now who have gotten really wealthy and then bored. And they start being deviant because their wealth can no longer entertain them. It becomes meaningless. And even if we look at the Kardashian family, they are so wealthy, and yet they don't seem particularly happy. They certainly are modifying themselves, even if we just look at it through the lens of plastic surgery. And, when you're so busy modifying every aspect of how you look, and you're so concerned with how you look, then we slip over into vanity, into being vain, and how important it is to look a certain way. And with vanity, that only takes you so far because inevitably we all age. Inevitably, we all have things that happen to our bodies that push them out of the realm of what we consider to be perfect. All right, so I think I want millions and millions of dollars, but that still doesn't save me from aging. And it still doesn't really quench this thirst that I have because once I can buy everything that I want, then what? What is exciting after that? And then, of course, we have the celebrity examples where they slip into the deviancy, where they are doing very bad things. A lot of celebrities, as we know, get addicted to drugs and they have alcohol problems. So when we look at the Venus idea of like, I want to be rich and famous, do we really want to be rich and famous? Okay. So as we're looking at Venus this week, these are some of the questions that you might find coming up for you. It's like, what do I really want? I have this ideal that I hold in my head. I want to be able to pull in whatever attention feels good, as much money as I need, and I want to be desired. So think about it like, okay, but then what? What comes after all of that? Venus things can be very tangible. You know, Venus is the ruler of both Taurus and Libra. And in Taurus, Venus rules the earth, the things that we eat, the things that please our senses. In Libra, Taurus rules relationship, the things we love, the way that we interact with our partnership, the way that we connect. But what else? Once you have those needs met, then what? There's always something that still comes up missing. And we could look at that through a few different lenses. We could look at Scorpio on the other side of Taurus as that need to go deep to understand ourselves. And then we can look at Mars on the other side of Libra to say, figuring out who we are, knowing who we are. And then, of course, which is true for all of us all the time, it really is that relationship with something higher. Depends on how you relate to it. You will never hear me saying that you can only worship a single God or a single version of God, or you have to use a very specific word. And that's not very in vogue for me to say. But an all loving, ever present, true nature, universal God energy, you really think it's that particular? When there are so many different languages on the planet that somehow every single person from every culture speaking every language must refer to this energy as something specific or else? No. Okay. So let's dive into the charts. We're going to look at the astrology of the week. So, speaking of that exact question, we start off with Venus in a square to Jupiter on November 3rd. Jupiter is the man-made religions. It's the human philosophies. It is the way of being able to see the world through the lens of things that are bigger than we are. However, it still has a very man-made quality to it. And when we look at philosophies, religions, teachings through the lens of the human mind, there's always going to be some sort of distortion because we each are human. We are each having our own unique experience of being human. Yes, we are souls that are connected to something higher, but when we come down onto this earth, we are limited by what we're able to see and the manner that we're able to see it. So, Jupiter, through the sign of Cancer, as it's been in for the last several months and will continue to be for the next several months, that is asking us to explore our emotional landscape, to look at our family, at our history, and maybe in this case, it's the belief system that we learned from our family. The way that our relationship to philosophies, religion, through our life experience is so impacted by our early childhood experience. Also, just through the lens of our emotional reactivity and what really sets us off, because, you know, when we're set off emotionally, it changes our perception quickly. And when we have Venus here in Libra, the sign that she rules, making a square to Jupiter, it is going to put some of those bigger questions, like I was just asking you, into context. What is important? What am I focusing on? Are these relationships that I find myself in, do they feel balanced? Am I the problem? Am I seeking something that I can actually obtain? What am I really seeking? What am I really wanting? How do I really feel? These are going to be questions. And we can see right across here, Chiron is still in this T square. Chiron is at 24 Aries. So Chiron is also a part of this story. Even though it's not exact, Chiron is reminding you to keep coming back to yourself. Who are you really? Not who is that beautiful part of you that wants all the validation. Not who is that part of you that wants more money and wants to be seen as successful. Not that part of you that wants to fit in because you believe the right things and you're in the same camp as your friends and family. These are deeper questions that you're going to be looking at, and they're important to answer for yourself, at least begin to answer. What is it that you really want? What is really important here? Because when we're grasping at some of the superficial things, the things that the media tells us we want, you want to be thin, you want to be young, you want to be beautiful, you want to be rich, you want to look good. Like, come on. That stuff is great in the moment, but it doesn't leave you with anything tangible. You have nothing to show for any of that. When we look at Venus and Libra, this is relationships. So there's a lot around relationship building. You want to make sure that you're building your relationships from the most solid, secure part of you, not the part that's looking around trying to make sure that everyone sees how popular and important you are. We're also looking on this same day at Venus making this quincunx aspect to Saturn. So Saturn is the advisor. Saturn is the energy that will call you out and say, why does that matter? So Saturn here is definitely going to challenge you. Saturn is that voice that says, who cares what you're wearing? Think of the times when you've left the house and you've been in an outfit that you hated and you just had to endure through the day. And the voice in your head keeps saying, you look awful. Wow, I can't believe you wore that. Oh, you don't fit in with the rest of these people. Oh my God, everybody must be talking about how awful you look. Okay, we've all had those days. Well, Saturn is the energy that says, it doesn't matter. Nobody's really paying that much attention to you anyway. And the truth is, if you're going to waste all this mental space condemning yourself for what you're wearing, you're missing out. There's more interesting stuff going on in the world. On November 4th, we have Mars entering Sagittarius, immediately coming into an opposition from Uranus. All right, I progressed this map back to June 14th. This is when Mars was making the square to Uranus. And Mars made a square to Uranus right after it had been retrograde in the sign of Leo and Cancer. So if you think back to mid-June when we had this Mars-Uranus square, what was happening? Because this is going to give you some information about what this Mars-Uranus opposition is going to feel like for you. So the Uranus energy is rebellion, electricity, innovation, and sudden awakening. And Mars energy, the individual drive, it represents our assertion and our passion. So these two, when they come into connection, can be some strong energy. There's a potential for us to take action on something. Maybe it's a new way of thinking, a new way of responding, a new way of seeing a situation. Now that we have both Mars and Uranus in the axis of the mind, which is Gemini Sagittarius, we know that there's some stuff, some mental stuff stirring. So just keep an eye out for whatever that is in your life. Right after that opposition, we have our full moon in Taurus. Taurus, also being Venus ruled, brings in this Venus element. When we're looking at Taurus and Scorpio together, as I talk about in my talk later this week, we are looking at the axis of abundance and lack. So when we go back to these Venus themes of like, what is it that you really want? One of the questions that you can ask yourself underneath that is, what do I really feel is missing? That's the Scorpio question. So with Scorpio, we feel like we don't have the power to get something. We're lacking in it. We need somebody else to give it to us. So whether that's sharing their money, their wealth, their abundance with us, validating that we are sexy and desirable and lovable, whether it's just creating this sense of mysteriousness, secrecy, and taboo that we don't have. Because Taurus isn't the most exciting sign. Taurus is earth energy that says, just put one foot in front of the other. Do the next thing that needs to be done. And that's how you grow your abundance. So we think about celebrity. Yes, on some level, many of us would love to live the lifestyle of the rich and famous. But what happens? We don't necessarily want to put in the work that it takes. How much work would it take to make millions of dollars? And then how much work does it take to keep your weight at a certain level? Or in case of the Kardashians, to keep yourself looking far more youthful than your actual years? Well, it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of surgery. It takes a lot of pain and suffering. And Taurus isn't always down for that. Taurus likes comfort. Sometimes it's like, oh, I'm just comfy here. I have enough. And that's really the goal, is to remember that you have enough and you are enough. But we're always over here in this Scorpio energy trying to stir up some drama. trying to stir up some attention or stir up some validation. Now, this moon at 13 degrees of Taurus and Scorpio isn't making many aspects. The biggest aspect that it's making is in a sextile and trine to the nodes, which to me is important because the sun and the moon are the most powerful planets. They're the most powerful energies when it comes to the nodes. And with the South Node in Virgo, and we're looking at letting go of perfection and moving into the Piscean trust, surrender, and flow, and just allowing things to be exactly as they are. So it reminds me once again, I talked a few weeks ago about this reality show called Love is Blind. Here's another way to look at it. You know, people that want to go on reality shows, probably on some level, they want to get what is promised at the end, in this case, love and marriage. But there's also another part of them that wants the attention. They want the celebrity. Well, these poor people are getting so torn apart by everybody online, which is another reason why we might say maybe my values aren't in being famous. Maybe I don't want to be held up against, in this case, the Virgo perfection. If you don't say the right thing, you don't monitor the way that you look, if you are too sloppy, then we're going to crush you. We are going to come in and we are going to judge you. So there's always this flip side of being famous where you are also being judged. And then you think about having a ton of money. And I know plenty of people who have a lot of money, and there is sometimes a little bit of an embarrassment about what they have and a desire to hide what they have because they don't want people to single them out. They don't want people always coming with their hand out saying, hey, can you give me some of what you have? There might even be a low level guilt about having more than other people. So I'm bringing this up because this is the Taurus Scorpio axis in a nutshell. If any of these themes are coming up, and the baseline theme here is, am I enough? Do I have what I want? And what is missing? And are the things that I'm trying to get, are they really in alignment with what I want? You know, this is very deep introspection time. And that's what this North Node in Pisces is helping you to do. It's helping you to say, just slow down, distance yourself a little bit from what is immediately in front of you, and let's recalculate. November 6th, Venus moves into Scorpio. November 6th, then we watch Venus make this quincunx to Neptune, and then very soon after that moves into Scorpio. Venus is doing more work. This is that spiritual question. What is it that you want when you're quiet? As soon as she moves into Scorpio, right off the bat, she's making another quincunx to Uranus. She's in this yod, and the yod, nicknamed the finger of God, puts pressure. So we have pressure on the Venus parts of us, the parts that want love, appreciation, balance, diplomacy, ease, flirtation, want to be desired, desire other things, want the money. And now with Venus and Scorpio, which is the sign that represents lack, oh, what happens if I don't have those things? And Neptune and Uranus are here to explain that you might not want those things anyway, because they only lead to emptiness. The things that really matter in your life are the things that connect with your heart, which money does not, beauty does not, fame does not, attention does not. Because on the other side of all of those things, money, fame, beauty, attention, there's always this dark side that shows itself that is so destructive. We do not want the destruction of being cruelly judged as celebrity. We don't want the destruction of having so much money that we then become bored and nothing is important anymore. We don't want the destruction of being so vain that our physical beauty is the most important thing, because we will always lose that. That is not something that people hold on to. And of course, we know it's important. It's our relationships with our other humans that we love. It's the connection with our creativity, with the things that really put our heart on fire, that light us up. It's our animals. It's our connection with our higher power. Those are the things that are sustaining and rich and usually pretty low cost. And those are the things that you can keep. But in order to see that, we have to confront some of those darker Venus parts of us that say, yes, but I know I'd be happier if I was rich and famous. I know that I would feel more loved and appreciated and beautiful if everybody was telling me that. So this is a week where you have to confront some of those parts of you. Here's the thing. Here's what I've noticed. When it comes to wanting eternal beauty, wealth, popularity, if we don't have those things, there is a tendency to beat ourselves up. It's that voice in our own heads that say, you're not good enough. Look at how old you look. Look at how many wrinkles you have. Look at how much weight you've gained. Wow, look at the vacations everybody else is going on. There's something wrong with you because you don't have that kind of money, or you aged too fast. You didn't wear enough sunscreen when you were younger. You eat too much crap, right? So think about that voice in your head that isn't very kind. And when we have Venus in Scorpio, there's some confrontation right there. And then right after that, Venus comes into a square with Pluto. Like I said, the Venus themes are relentless this week. So you got to be on top of your own connection to the way that you feel about how you look and how much you have and what other people have and how much attention you're getting. And you got to get really clear on like, what do you really want? What is really important? Also, I've changed this chart and put a bunch of asteroids. We see the sun in a conjunction with Lilith on the same day. Lilith represents our very old, very ancient fears, the things that we are so defended against, often came about from past lives. Maybe the things that happened to us in past lives that were ultimately our demise. And so the sun in conjunction with Lilith on this same day, it strengthens that invitation to really get to the core of what is it? And can I just love myself anyway? Can I just be okay? Somebody very dear to me texted me the other day a question. It says, what if everything is okay? And what if I'm okay? And that keeps popping back into my mind. What if everything is okay? And what if I'm okay? What if everything is okay and you are okay? On Saturday, we have the sun making an official trine and sextile to the nodes. So just take a deep breath. What if everything is okay? That is a very sun in trine to the North Node in Pisces question. Mars here in a trine to Ceres. I feel like every forecast that I've done over the last few weeks has this Ceres reminder that says, come back to the body. When you are with your body and you're present in your body, all of that mental stuff, none of it matters so much. Oh, by the way, I don't think I said this, but Uranus has now officially moved back into Taurus. So, more Venus. This is Uranus finishing out its 8-year stretch in Taurus. Think about everything from 2018 until now that has gone on with your values, with the way that you relate to your food, to your body, to your money. Uranus has shaken us up. Uranus has really asked us to get clear on our values. A lot of us have really shifted and changed with our value system over the last 8 years when it relates to those things. And now we're in the finishing up period. Venus showing up again, saying, what do you want to focus on? Think of everything you've learned. Don't go back into that stagnant zone, thinking that you want something that is going to turn out empty. All right, I hope that was helpful. See you all next week.